Hi, I'm Gordon Lamphere with the Real Finds Podcast, the podcast series where we speak with key entrepreneurs, scientists, and activists who are shaping the real estate industry and, as a result, our world. On today's podcast, we'll be interviewing Michael Radel and Ian Hickey from HomesOnChain. HomesOnChain is a blockchain platform that seeks to provide a safe and secure platform to simplify property transfers and management processes. On the podcast, we'll discuss blockchain fundamentals, tokenization, and the future of the real estate industry. It's well worth a listen. Hey everyone, I'm here today with Michael and Ian, and they're going to be talking about blockchain, real estate, and kind of give us an interesting perspective on some of the evolutions that are happening more on the digital side of the real estate world. Michael and Ian, thanks for hopping on the podcast today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us, Gordon.
So first, could you guys introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your corporation?
Sure. We're with Enlyt. I myself actually started the business when I was in college going to DePaul University. That's where I met Ian. And I started the business really doing smart home systems, being in the field, getting on a ladder, running crews. I grew the business since then to get and do a lot of commercial work. We've worked on projects with big brands like Malia Brands to deliver a smart hotel in Miami. We've worked with Light Fitness in order to help them deliver their internet and fitness platform. So I've been an entrepreneur all my life. And we've recently grown into a startup called HomesOnChain, in which we are exploring deploying homes basically on the blockchain, or the ability to put the digital assets of a home on the blockchain to make that process of buying, selling, managing real estate a lot easier.
Hey, Gordon, thanks for having us. It's a pleasure to be on your show. I went the safer route. I went the corporate route right after college when Mike went out and cut his teeth in the entrepreneurial space. So after many years in the marketing and publishing space at Leo Burnett, the Condé Nast of the world, reconnected with Mike because I thought what he was doing, pushing the envelope of home automation and integration uh, into emerging technologies, I thought it was an opportunity to help him scale and grow the business. And the opportunity that we landed on was the concept and value proposition for HomesOnChain, largely based on all of the experiences and issues that came up with the parent company Enlyt over those 20 years. So it's really leveraging those findings um, to drive new and emerging technologies in the market.
So going back to HomesOnChain, HomesOnChain gives us an idea just from the name that it's residential. So you guys do both commercial and residential in terms of the way in which your blockchain interacts with real estate.
So HomesOnChain is primarily residential. It is a residential product. Enlyt does not do blockchain technology. It delivers digital twin technologies that is separate and part and parcel from blockchain technology. So essentially, the value proposition for HomesOnChain is that we feel that it, being a token on the Ethereum blockchain, will become the standard for buyers, sellers, people who transfer and manage um, residential real estate when they go to sit at that table. When we go into a merchant store today, we don't get questioned about by the merchant about the validity of our Visa or MasterCard. They trust it. That's what we want HomesOnChain to become for residential real estate, having everything from a title, a deed, surveys, marketing assets, IoT related devices, maintenance records, all in one single space that can be accessed in a trustless way on an immutable blockchain that is fully transparent. We feel there's a lot of value behind that.
So look, I've bought and sold cryptocurrency and I have a general idea of how the blockchain works and how tokenization works, but could you give a broad perspective for somebody who might be tuning in who has no idea how cryptocurrency works? how the blockchain works and kind of how it helps facilitate real estate processes?
Sure. So think of the blockchain as an alternative to, your traditional GitHub databases, right? The blockchain is a place where you can store information in a transparent way. It's not a black box system controlled by a centralized entity. It is open and out there, much like many of the residential documents and information regarding homes is public access. There is obviously private information that can be gated and for account holders' eyes only. Um, but at the end of the day, it's a way to transfer data in a more seamless way. If you have sold blockchain, if you have sold crypto on the blockchain, you know that you don't need to go to a banker's office and sign any documentation. You can literally transact with anybody, anywhere, anytime. Um, and that's what we want to do. We truly believe that real estate will eventually be on the blockchain, and we want to prepare consumers to be able to sit at that table with the trust and safety that's going to be developed through the HomesOnChain token.
I think the only thing I would add is that on the Ethereum network, the idea of a smart contract is really what we're developing. And that's, I think, a really powerful thing when you look at it in transactions, meaning that if both parties agree to a transaction, it'll get executed regardless of any other third party per se. And then that transaction's on the blockchain forever. It's transparent, it's immutable, and you're allowed to really speed up the process of transactions. And that's really where HomesOnChain came from. I was down in the city doing a transaction, and I spent the whole day at a title company. To have someone run back and forth, give me paperwork, make sure I had XYZ plat survey, the contract, the operating docs, everything that comes with it. And after that, I was driving back to the suburbs from downtown and got on a call with our team and said, how can we solve this really slow, archaic process? And HomesOnChain really birthed out of that. And we want to be able to work with title companies, have a product that they can use to help them speed the process up, help the lawyers, go through the checklist, help the broker go through all those minutia details that come down to actually transacting, and having it in one place that everyone can use, everyone can upload to, and really save everyone time and money, because that's where we find value. And we also think that the market's ready for disruption. The whole process is really archaic, and there's a lot of governments now that are listening to the blockchain, want to have projects up. One in particular that we talked about is the California DMV is going to begin to put all of their DMV information on the blockchain, which is great, because everyone associates the DMV with a really slow, archaic process. So here in Illinois, they passed a law, we believe it was around 2017, where you're able to do real estate transactions on the blockchain, and that it's legally acceptable to do that. And there's a handful of other states that do it as well, Florida in particular. And that's what we're really developing when it comes to the blockchain and HomesOnChain.
So I understand the blockchain is very advantageous in terms of speed and in terms of speeding up what can sometimes seem a somewhat Byzantine transaction. But there's definitely some hesitation from not just traditional forces that stand to benefit, but people in the commercial real estate and legal world that see that Byzantine transaction as a way to protect an asset. What kind of safeguards are in place with blockchain to prevent an asset from being stolen in the transaction?
That's a great question, Gordon. And that's really our core or our main focus, just because we come from the real estate business, right? Is that we need to first verify that it's your asset, that you are the owner of that real estate asset. Then we'll run a bunch of what they call public API calls, which is a fancy way to say that our platform looks on the internet, goes to public deed records. We'll run a simple title search through a real title company, through a lawyer, and we will verify that you own the asset. And we'll do that in a multi-layer authentication mode, meaning, sure, we can send you an SMS text message, we can send you an email. We want to have you physically at the property to geolocate you to make sure that you're there and that you own it. Then we'll go through things like KYC to just further uh, go through a security audit process to make sure that you own the asset, that you're uploading all the relevant information to that asset. And then during the actual transaction, um, that both parties are verified in order to make that happen. Now, when it comes to, let's say, stealing a property or an asset, there are certain mechanisms that we've developed for our platform that will allow us to safeguard you. Now, in the world of the blockchain, if it's not your keys and you're not safeguarding your actual crypto assets, you know, that's some gray area that would be put on the user essentially. So, there's a lot of bad press about FTX and how those people's funds were essentially stolen. Well, those were on an unsecure exchange where they just assumed or they trusted that that exchange had one-to-one assets, and they didn't. And that's really a part of the educational process about the blockchain, where we're going to educate our consumers, our clients, to make sure that they have the right wallet set up, that their protocols are in place where they can protect those assets. Ian, would you like to interject?
Yeah, I would just like to add that uh, safety and security obviously has to be the forefront topic when you're thinking about deploying a technology like this. And I think it sort of needs to be thought of in two ways. One, the things that we can control, and two, the things that we can't control. This is an emerging market, it's emerging technology, it's very early. There will be industry standards and protocols that develop that are guided by policy decision makers in political offices, right? So all that we can do is lead from a best practices perspective and try to imagine what those are and control the things like Mike talked about that we can control as uh, a company behind a product. But there are, those risks of, being a part of an early market that is emerging. And there are certainly some risks out there, basically around the safety and security of your own wallet if you hold your own keys. And if you don't hold your own keys and you keep your crypto and assets on a centralized exchange, then you're banking on the safety and security of that un-FDIC, centralized exchange. So we focus on the things that we can control, and that's all of the validity and checks and balances around the data that we collect to provide our product to the consumers.
So, moving to kind of a newer topic, one of the biggest advantages that um, uh, folks in finance, individuals who are in the real estate world that are looking to get in, uh, folks that look in terms of trying to create a more diverse and equitable real estate world, look at tokenization of real estate as kind of a way to get broader access into um, the real estate world of investment for people who might not have $100,000 to put on a down payment. Uh, can you guys talk a little bit about that? And does your business and your startup relate to the whole tokenization process of uh, the crypto real estate game?
So my the initial answer is no. We are not doing fractional tokenization of real estate, whether it's a house, a single family home, a 140 unit condo complex, or apartment building.
Somebody else will offer that.
However, we can provide the underlying token for that, meaning that all of those assets are in one place, that someone can go look at the plat survey, the rent rolls, the maintenance records, even real-time data of the building, what it's using on an energy basis. So we would look to work with those firms in order to help that the base structure of that solid, so that they can essentially submit or work another smart contract on top of ours. That's the beauty of the Ethereum network. And most people I don't think understand is that our particular token, the 1155, or that smart contract, allows you to manipulate the underlying smart contract so you can do those kinds of transactions.
So if we can stipulate, let's just live in fantasy land here for a second, and
Living in fantasy land, all right.
let's stipulate that in the future, real estate will be on the blockchain, right? Let's just agree to that for a minute.
It will.
When that happens, everybody will come to that table, right, with a different folder, we believe a different token. So it's going to be sort of, what are the checks and balances? What's the value proposition? What are the values behind the brand that, is that Visa, MasterCard, or Discover in your wallet? That's really how we're thinking about this. We see a world in which a large percentage of real estate can be transacted, especially internationally,
Yes.
through the blockchain. And everybody's gonna come to the table with, do you have a black card, or do you just have a regular old credit card? And so we want to be the most trusted, the friendliest, the easiest to use protocol when people approach that table in the future.
And we believe that our 20 years in the real estate experience of developing real estate, working with real estate developers, brokers, lawyers, that leads us to really understand the market, the customer, how the process works. We're not just, some MIT guys that have an idea and want to go do it. We've been in the field. We have worked on those projects, whether they're, large projects in the West Loop to a hotel down in Miami. We understand ownership, how there's various owners, how the stack works out when it comes to construction, how you deliver a building, whether it comes from the design aspect of it to the engineering. So we've taken all of that experience and we're putting it into this new project, HomesOnChain. And we really think that that's our real life experience that'll allow us to deliver a much better product than some of the other, let's say, people that are skirting around the idea of putting real estate on the blockchain.
So, Michael, we can get back to HomesOnChain, but I was wondering if you could talk briefly about your experience in real estate development and real estate investment, because I know from your track record, from just a cursory knowledge of your activities in the Chicagoland market, that you've been pretty busy over your career in real estate. And could you tell a little bit about some of the transactions and developments that you were involved with?
Sure, Gordon, thank you. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I actually started my business when I was in college at DePaul University. I was lucky to work with a firm called Belgravia Group, which was Jeff Ruttenberg's business. His father's Buzz Ruttenberg, and they are a really well-respected real estate development firm. I was studying a minor in computer science, and I had the idea to put networking in houses in Lincoln Park. And I began to ask around to some of our college friends if they were in the business. One of them, actually a friend of ours, Mike Oboy, was working for Belgravia Group. And I worked on 2645 North Racine. That was my first project. I got a set of floor plans from them, and I worked up a budget, and I was accepted into that group. It was actually really funny. I left the meeting with a set of floor plans, and they said, "Give me a bid, Michael." And I said, sure, okay. And I walked out of there and I had to call my dad and I said, Dad, what's a bid? And he's like, that's a construction term for a budget. Um, and I, calculated out wire length, how much, time I would put into the job, what I'd pay myself, material overhead, insurance, all those small things that a small entrepreneur needs. And I began to work on a bunch of residential projects with Belgravia Group. As they grew over time, I ended up working on their commercial projects, really scaling the business on a more, you know, larger scale with running crews, working with architects, pre-planning, all the way to punch list and delivery of a home. And then we'd work with the homeowner or even the commercial owner on their technology upgrades for the building. So whether that's TV systems, video conferencing, audio, video security. So really the entire developmental process of building a building out of the ground to a finished space, and then ultimately maintaining those systems over time. In that process, I was exposed to some great real estate opportunities that I was able to buy into when I was younger, from just an investment standpoint. I was working for these real estate developers, watching them become successful, and they opened the door to some projects in the West Loop that I was able to essentially invest in as a capital partner, help develop that property. One in particular is 106 North Aberdeen. It was right next to Harpo Studios at the corner of Aberdeen and Washington. It was a beautiful heavy timber loft building that we gutted. It was about 100,000 square feet. We gutted it. It was DX12 zone. So we did first and second floor were a commercial office that I essentially built out for myself and my team. Uh, and then the rest were condos that we worked on. And then from there, we were actually kind of really experiencing the growth of the West Loop, in particular, some project called CA23. Now they're on CA6, which is 6 different reiterations of that project. And they've done really well. And I just really got into the financing, the design process, working with the architect, working with the general contractor, and really fine tuning that, and then essentially leasing those properties up, and then I sold those to my actual tenants. And as you sell, roll into other projects. So we did a couple others in the West Loop. And then I've done some single family home development on the North Shore of Chicago, in which we're, building single family homes and leasing them. And then we end up eventually selling them. So I've had a lot of experience in the overall process of how to buy, sell real estate, and then all the minutia in between with developing it, working with the general contractor, all the subs, all of those little things that you have to understand have to come together in order to have a finished product. And that's really a unique skill set that I developed, and that lend towards all the technology that we're developing because I'm in the field, I know all the pitfalls, and we really want to, uh, curtail those where those things don't come up, where it can be a more seamless process. I know that we're talking about the blockchain, and I see that eventually, I think a lot of construction is going to get put on the blockchain, whether it's inventory tracking, where the products go. And then again, all those lend themselves to you need a base smart contract for that piece of real estate. And that's what HomesOnChain is. I know that that it's a residential product, but it is on our roadmap to make it more commercial friendly, more in a let's call it a concierge blockchain development. So there's a couple property owners we're talking to now in which we think that we'd be able to do that in the commercial space, and that lends itself towards leasing, selling, and really to be able to integrate those future blockchain projects at a later date, and that's the platform that we're building. We want to make it somewhat future proof, like all the projects I've worked on.
So, look, moving towards the future, and talking about kind of longer term investment strategies and less of your typical just absolute down and dirty deal making and transactions.
Sure.
One of the things that's come up when I've been researching you guys is building energy use, understanding more of the ins and outs of the day-to-day of management. Could you guys dive into how your product kind of works in that and kind of how you see the blockchain going in terms of management information? Because for a lot of folks that are on the development side, I think it's pretty easy to get why blockchain might work in a transactional viewpoint, but the information technology side is, I think, more in depth and more fascinating for at least your property management company.
That's a great question, Gordon. Do you want to take this, Ian?
Yeah, sure. So, we think of buildings as having, a health span and a lifespan. We almost look at them as humans, right? And as a property owner or manager, you want your building to be as efficient as possible. So,
Oh.
yeah, we see, and from our homes to the places that we work, the devices that are plugged in can continually and more often than not are beaming signals, right? Whether that's energy usage signal, whether that's a time and field and operational sort of maintenance signal that's being put out, or that something is broken. So we just feel that there are so many things that can be connected and better prepare building engineers and owners to do their job on a daily basis. Instead of having eyes at every single property because you physically need them there looking at things, think of a scenario where in the future you have one engineer that covers a regional area of 4 to 5 buildings because they're all aggregated into one dashboard where he can see everything from water pressure to lighting to security access to any number of the 100 things that Mike could rattle off as being in the field for over 20 years. So it's really pointing arrows towards all of those uh, areas of minutia in a building and putting eyes on them in unique ways, whether it's using a camera, or some sort of other, widget that can, be aggregated, normalized, analyzed, and then eventually displayed for that end user.
I would also add the concept that us as a team we've been talking about and that we're exploring with some potential clients is the idea of a digital twin. Are you familiar with that, Gordon?
I am, but I'm not sure all of our users
Sure.
and would understand that. So can you go a little bit more in depth?
Sure. So a digital twin is the real life representation of a asset, whether that's a piece of real estate or a car or a coffee maker, but it's in the digital format or the digital realm where you're able to manipulate that digital asset to your advantage, essentially. So, in developing what we want to develop with some of our potential clients, is a digital twin that is scan, meaning that you go and you scan the actual asset with LiDAR, radar, and photos, and that's uploaded into a BIM or a architectural format, and then you actually link all of the digital signals Ian was talking about in that. So uh, we'll go through some use cases, which I think is better to talk about because people can understand it much more than just a digital twin. So let's say you have yeah. So in the case of our project with Life Fitness, we built a innovation lab for them in which we had about a 8,000 square foot gym. It was a lab essentially that they had all their equipment there. It was scanned. We were able to track who was in the building, where they were at, meaning that you walked up to an individual treadmill, and then when you got on the treadmill essentially knew who you were, right? Because you had a phone that was on a Wi-Fi network that we triangulated you within the space down to that actual asset. Sure. So once you're able to do those things and have a real-time digital twin, you give all these tools to the user of the space, in this case, the gym user, right? So we're able to track all your data on the treadmill, how you lifted, what you lifted, and then you can get into things like back of the house, well, why are these machines being used more than the ones across the way? And we would use that to make analytical decisions in switching out machines to create longer lifespan, right? So if these three treadmills over here are being used more frequently than the three on the other side of the space, in 3 months we're going to swap those out so that the belts and the gears don't fail. Then you get into things like back of the house again, where if you're having a bad workout, maybe you didn't sleep well, but your bed told you that. So maybe we're going to suggest when you walk in the door that you drink a green smoothie, and you accept that, and that ties into the POS system at the gym, where they know you like a green smoothie with an extra shot of energy boost, maybe an extra shot of banana because I like bananas, because those green smoothies can be kind of nasty. Um, so when you begin to digitize real estate and any space, you can really have a multiple or a plethora of tools in which you can normalize data and make great decisions off of it and serve up suggestions for people. And we everyone knows AI is coming. Sure, Chat GTP's there. We think some of those things will be useful in making suggestions to someone, whether it's how they sleep, how they work out. Uh, Obviously, that's the case in the gym space. In the hotel space, it was geared more towards guest centric information. But on the back of the house, again, if one of the air conditioners is running hot, the engineer can pull up that actual digital twin on his phone, be able to find out what the asset is, be able to order the part immediately because the HVAC tells you what part's failing, versus having to go up to the fifth floor. You got to key in through three different doors. You got three different keys. You really automate that process of just doing things in a physical space, and that's really what we think. Digital twins, the blockchain is going to allow you to do, because you have all of these great data sets that we've put on a platform. We've normalized the data sets, and then the back of the house, the IT manager can begin to make decisions off that.
Real quickly, based on Mike's use case of Life Fitness, for those that may not know, Life Fitness is the world's largest manufacturer of home and gym workout equipment. They supply, roughly 70% of the gyms out there. So they have great relationship with gyms, but they don't own the gyms, correct? And gyms were being used less, and gyms were being, uh, you know, tightening their budgets and not buying as much Life Fitness product. So Life Fitness was at a stage of being a great manufacturer of workout equipment, but hadn't really digitally transformed yet, right? And companies like Mirror and Peloton were entering the market and slowly chipping away share by delivering alternative experiences based on digital networks, essentially. So they wanted to be able to integrate with other partners to figure out how their hardware could work, how technology, digital twin technology, signaling technology could be built into first generation hardware, how the membership experience could be elevated. So this was just Life Fitness's problem. We see every company out there, Gordon, is going to be facing this point of digital transformation. At one point, digital transformation just meant, did you have a website, right? Uh, we feel it's going to be taking on a whole new meaning where the lifespan and health span and everything regarding the places that we dwell in on a daily basis, from our homes to the places where we work, are going to be optimized in ways that are really going to benefit human activity.
I would add this in closing, and this is again comes from our real life experience, is that we want to make it agnostic, meaning that we can work with any partner. Anyone can look at our software development kit, an API, and vice versa, meaning that for us to do these integrations, we had to vet a lot of projects, a lot of vendors, make sure that their house was in order so that we can actually deploy these really exciting technologies. And that's really what the blockchain can help you do when it comes to creating an agnostic platform that anyone can be able to interact with. Because when you have proprietary closed off systems, you essentially gate people, right? And that's not what we think the future is. We think that it's open protocol, open software that people will be able to innovate on top of
safely and securely.
Yeah.
So going to looking towards the future, I'd like to start up our final four questions. These are questions we ask everybody, and I think they give a good perspective and a little bit of additional information on not just you, but kind of things that we can look forward to in the podcast. So, the first question we ask everybody, and this is for both you, Michael, and for Ian, is where do you see the real estate business going? This can be blockchain centric, or this could just be purely real estate. But for each of you, where do you see the real estate world going?
Sure, that's a great question, Gordon. I really believe that it'll transform quickly because it is such an archaic business. Not in a bad sense, but that there's a lot of technologies that exist that are fragmented, that are not put together in a platform. And I really see it going towards being a more tech-centric business, whether that's just on the management end of things, on the cash flow and finance end of things, during the build process. And the idea of having digital twins, I think, is a real important thing that's going to happen. And I think that'll be backed up by a blockchain technology because it is secure, because it is immutable, and that you'll be able to have all this information out there that's shareable, that people can view, and that it'll help make buildings more efficient, more centric towards the user, where you'll be able to see ebbs and flows of people when they come, how they interact with the building itself, how the outside environment impacts the building, and that they'll become a lot more energy efficient. That they'll become better spaces to be in. As someone that's developed some real estate, worked with architects and designers, and understood the process is that you got to really look at it like Ian said, that it's a living, breathing thing, and that the more you think about that, and when you implement technologies that make it a better environment, that you'll have better products out there. They'll be more efficient. They'll be better to lease up. They'll be more valuable, essentially.
I'll give the condensed version. I see the commercial industry leading headfirst into technology because the end users are going to want it. They're going to want that access, and it's going to be driven within the framework of policy, standards, procedures. I've worked on FDA business before. We we want those. That's when people sitting on the sidelines will say, okay, now I'm going to get in. And you know what? We're going to get in with the people who are acting that way from day one, that were leading as if there were those standards, policies, and protocols already in place.
Look, I don't think anyone's going to argue on this podcast, or any of our listeners is going to argue that the real estate business has some antiquated and Byzantine aspects. That's one of the whole reasons why this podcast exists, is to bring to light some areas that we need improvement. But the next question kind of goes a little further away from the real estate business as a whole, but just to general self improvement. So, one of the questions we always ask everyone is to look back in time and to look at themselves. And for both Michael and Ian, going back in time and looking at yourself, what would be something that you would tell your young self, your high school senior self, your college senior self? What would you say if you could just give, one little tidbit of life advice?
To not be fearful. To
That's a good one. Yeah.
to when this is a great quote, but when you're scared, when it feels like you're scared, that's the moment you step in. And that leads to failing. I have failed on so many projects, not actually failed, but chasing a project, you end up losing it. That's really where you gain life experience, so you can become a better business operator.
It's a good answer, Mike.
Thanks.
I would say, and it's something I still struggle with today, is to keep perspective. We get so busy in our day-to-days. We have more going on than ever. And it's always nice to be able to step back and just sort of take a minute to think about the things that are going on in your life instead of just being so busy doing them. And I think that really leads to that self-reflection leads to improved in behavior actions down the road.
Great answer, Ian.
Look, both great answers. One of the things that we're always looking for is to learn on this podcast. And look, I'm a huge reader. That's just a little tidbit of some of the books that, little tiny little bit of some of the books that I read on a daily basis. And I'm also curious what others are reading or what other books folks have enjoyed who are in the industry or around the industry. So I was curious if both Ian and Michael, you could give me a book that's maybe changed your perspective on business or the real estate world that at the very least I should pick up, or any of the folks who subscribe to the podcast should pick up.
Ian, you go first. I have a really different answer.
Sure. So I'm going to go with the book that I'm currently reading, Gordon, and it's a book that I'm reading with my son at night before bed.
Okay, that sounds good. All right.
It's about Captain Gene Fluckey of the U.S. Navy.
Okay.
He was the first CEO to put a rocket launcher on the deck of a Navy submarine, and sort of came out of Annapolis leading in the school of thought that submarines shouldn't always be silent and only attack when they know that they can, that they should be, on top of the water more often than not, because when you're underwater, your field of view with the periscope is very shallow. When you're on top of the water with the periscope up, you can see for miles and miles and miles. So, that's continuing to sort of give me the inspiration to lead with an alternative set of eyes whenever possible, and to look at problems and situations in unique ways for solutions.
Very, very, very interesting book.
I will have to check that out, Ian. My, let's say, quintessential one a long time ago was Rich Dad Poor Dad, which, most, I think,
It's a
people.
classic. I'm not going to hit on Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Now, my Enlyt or my enlightened answer is Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Okay. All right.
Which is a book that has really shaped how I begin to look at business and myself, right? Is the yin to the yang. And that's really been something that I've always kind of leaned towards when it comes to how I want to interact with people, how I want to interact with my business, that you really have to keep things balanced, but ultimately provide quality. That's what the book is about. What is quality? And how you provide quality, whether that's in a relationship with someone or in the business environment. And you do that by being rational and solving problems from a rational standpoint. And that book I've read numerous times. I always get something different out of it. But that would be my overall answer to that is Zen in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which I see you have a Jordan jersey in the background.
Yeah, Bill Jackson is quite the Zen master. So,
yes. Well,
any Chicagoan who was alive in the '90s probably does that.
Well, I actually heard that he made like anyone that joined the team read that book. Is that true, or is that just a rumor?
I have heard that.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's true, and we're gonna have to have somebody fact check us on that. But yeah, I have heard that. And look, I think Zen and having a Zen or a Stoic or at least a very moderated, somewhat agnostic view of how you interact with the real estate world or the business world is essential. Anybody who's making emotional decisions in real estate or in business tends to get burned somewhere down the line. And it's definitely true for sports as well. So, look, I'm not going to throw shade anywhere towards a book that is about Zen or Stoicism or keeping a calm mind. And going down that road towards keeping a calm mind, the ultimate point of this podcast is to find folks like yourself who are changing the industry, taking a calm, collected approach, and trying to improve the real estate world that has a lot to be improved, right? That's the whole reason why we're here today. Regarding that, Michael, Ian, is there anybody that we should be bringing on the podcast that kind of has that calm, collected view, that might have an in-depth view of the real estate world that folks don't know about yet?
I'm going to defer to Michael because he's the real estate guy.
Sure. So I would say Peter Maris of Maris Construction.
Okay.
Pete and I have worked on numerous projects together. We've developed some real estate together. And being in the construction process, to me, that's just controlled chaos, right?
Oh,
like you have
anybody who's done development knows that. Yeah.
You got 20 different people working on a project. You all got to coordinate together. And he really understands that, and that allows him to be someone that can deliver great projects for investors, owners. And Pete's really knowledgeable. He's done development, he's done construction, and he owns, a couple other businesses that are in that environment. And he's a wealth of knowledge. He knows finance. He understands all of that. He knows the construction process. And then he also understands how to deliver a $5 million home to a really particular client, right?
Hey,
all
that's an art. That's an art. I'm not going to debate that. Yeah.
All those little pieces of blue tape around the house. Like, I've walked those projects with him, and that's a real skill set that's really unique. And I think your listeners could learn a lot from him.
Yeah, construction is definitely a combination of soft and more traditional hard skills.
Yes.
So, look, I couldn't do it. So I'm not going to throw shade on any GCs out there. Michael and Ian, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast today. I hope it was a good conversation on your end. I'm sure our listeners are going to enjoy it. And don't be a stranger. Reach out, because we're happy to have you on in the future.
Okay, great. Thanks for having us, Gordon.
Really
thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
And if you enjoyed the podcast, please give us a like, a 5-star rating, or a review. Your comments and interactions and subscriptions matter for the podcast algorithm, and they help us continue to get guests our viewers want to listen to and learn from. You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Gordon Lamphere with the Real Finds Podcast. Thank you for listening.